We've just finished our 4th week on our journey to Alaska, and it was very much about trucks, wildlife, and isolation. Our first night after leaving Jasper was at the Snaring campground, which is actually, they have 2 campgrounds. One is a regular, one is an overflow, and the only difference really between the overflow campground and the regular one is there are fewer trees probably in the overflow, and there are no fire rings. But I can't imagine having fires up here. Sun goes down, well, let's see. Tonight the sun is going to go down, I think, just before midnight. And I mean, what's the point of having a fire? We got supplies in Hinton and then headed toward Dawson Creek, or mile 0 of the Alaskan Highway. Our next 2 nights were at provincial parks, and the provincial parks here are wonderful. The first one was Greg Lake.
Ice cream, look at that.
Avoiding the mosquitoes, John? And the second one was Saskatoon.
So where are we?
We're in the Saskatoon Provincial Park. Is that what it's called?
I'm asking you.
I don't know.
Oh man.
But it's west of Grand Prairie, and it's a really nice campground. It has some electric hookups, and it's right on a.
And tell me, what's the temperature going to be next Thursday in Fairbanks?
I don't know.
Oh man, I told you that 3 times.
Did you? 3 times. There's a bug. Someone pointed out to me a long time ago that the mosquitoes will come through the screens. They get through the cracks around the screens. And I had taped up the screen in the bathroom, but I had not done the other screens. So this morning, the first thing I did was put tape around the screens to try to keep the insects out, because they did get through. Man, those little buggers. So I have probably 6 to 10 bites on me, and I'll be itching for a few days. We've also mixed in a few private campgrounds, and some might say, well, why don't you just, boondock, find a place to pull over, that sort of thing. But sometimes a commercial RV park will give you the amenities you need, like laundry, showers, if you want to dump your tanks, things like that. And sometimes the weather is just not conducive to, camping. As far as boondocking goes, it appears that Canada really doesn't allow sleeping in these pullouts that you find along the highway. And being guests in this country, we're really trying to follow all the rules, and we don't know what's public land, what isn't. I'm sure some of you do and can inform the rest of us. I'd love to see Slim Potato Head do an episode on boondocking in Canada. I thought I'd mention also that the RV park has Wi-Fi, which is actually why we stayed there. I wanted to upload a video. Even though their instructions say that if you go over 500 megabytes, they shut you off, it didn't shut me off because I had 1.5 gigs to upload. Fortunately, I have an app on my computer that will condense or will reformat these videos that I make, and it took it from 20 gigs down to 1.5 gigs, because if it had tried to upload 20 gigs, it would have taken, years. As it was, I think it took about 6 hours, and at least I got it up, and I think it's going to work okay. We've had quite a bit of rain this week. Every day it's rained, but it hasn't stopped us from seeing attractions and things like that.
side of this one, so then they can run this one.
They're going to run it.
Yeah, they want to run it again for Pioneer Days or whatever.
Oh, on coal, I would assume.
I think they use wood for these.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Wow.
He told me he shoveled wood in here all day just to get it up to pressure. Yeah. So now I'll put new tubes in. It'll be good for another 100 years.
As you continue north to mile 0 at Dawson Creek, the landscape really changes from the Rocky Mountains and the vistas there. It changes to boreal forest. And until you've actually experienced that kind of forest, you know, you read about it and you kind of wonder, you have these images in your mind. It's really an interesting forest, conifers and some deciduous trees, lots of these trembling aspen, they call them. Down in California, we call them quaking aspen. And these forests, typically every 75 years or so, a fire will come through and burn them down. So they all seem to be kind of the same size. So as you go through a stretch, they're kind of the same size. And then interspersed, there are lots of lakes and wetlands and that sort of thing. But along the highway through about Fort Nelson, it's just dominated by trucks everywhere. And you understand why if you understand the economy of Alberta and this region. It's very much an extractive industry area. They are extracting oil and gas, well, I should say gas mostly, and bitumen mining up in the boreal forests. And there's also lots of logging, so there's lots of logging trucks. And the trucks really outnumber cars at some point. So your risk of getting hit with rocks increases dramatically through these areas, especially when the roads turn to what they call chip seal, which is kind of a gravel with oil mixture, and then the cars kind of make it hard and a pavement type material. But the gravel is so thick along the sides of the roads. And what we've recognized is that it's really not the trucks that we're following that are kicking up and hitting windshields. It's the ones that pass us. We've talked to several RVers today, and they've had that same experience. It's the trucks that pass you that are probably kicking the rocks up really high, and then they're falling down and hitting your windshield. So we got our first ding in the windshield today. But I think that's just a rite of passage of anyone who travels on the Alaskan highway. One of the things that's become quite apparent on this last week is that 300 miles a day is pushing it. It gets rather tiring, the driving. I mean, it's beautiful, but you're on the lookout, of course, for frost heaves and lots of potholes and pavement changes and wildlife. And just, you know, that next view that comes around the corner where you might want to stop. And we've stopped a lot of places because we like to get out and stretch our legs and take a hike. And that's where the milepost book really has come in handy. Just reading that, reading along, looking ahead, seeing what's available. Fort Nelson was also the last spot we saw cell service for a couple of days. We were next headed toward Liard Hot Spring, and you know, I've heard that pronounced Laird and Liard, and I finally asked several locals and they said it's Liard, even though the person who was working at the gate at the hot spring pronounced it Laird. I don't think she was from around there. So anyway, I'm going to pronounce it Liard. And we had been recommended that we get there by 11, which is checkout time. We got there at noon because we had stopped to do a hike. And that hike was at Muncho Lake. We knew that there was an opportunity to see some of the sheep, what do they call them, stone sheep. And so we stopped and did maybe a couple miles up this alluvial fan, and in fact we did. We saw 4 4 of the stone sheep trying to get down. Well, they don't need to try. They're really great at climbing rocks, climbing down the edge of the cliff, and that was great. And then past Muncho, we stopped at Tetsu RV Services, and the reason we stopped there is we wanted the cinnamon buns that they do. And so we decided just to stay there because it had been kind of a rainy, wet day, and of course the weather makes driving even more tiring. And so we decided we'll just stay there. And I'm really glad we did, because at 4:30 in the morning, I looked out the window and saw Mama Moose and her 2 babies kind of skitter by our vehicle. I wish I'd been able to grab a camera, but you know, it happened just like that. We are first in line for cinnamon buns. 7:01.
They're late.
Show me your buns, John. 2 buns right out of the oven. Yummy, yummy. So we got to Liard at about noon, and we got a spot. The sign said vacancy. And in fact, I would say there were probably 8 or 10 vacant spots. So that was great, and obviously used the hot spring. Off to the hot springs.
Slippery and hot.
Our next stop was Watson Lake, which is the famous sign forest, and I had had a sign made thanks to Tim Smith, who recommended a sign company. So we hung our sign and did some more shopping and stayed in another RV park because it was raining and we wanted to do laundry and shopping and all of that sort of thing. It's even wetter today than it was yesterday. We're off to the sign forest to hang in the rain. It just never ends. There's a benefit to being tall. I lost the bag of screws I brought with us. Actually, it had nails in it. I lost it, so we found this in the van. It's one of those square head screws. From the MCD shades. Yeah, from the MCD shades. That's exactly what it's from. The leg from Watson Lake to Whitehorse seemed rather long. It's only about, I don't know, I think it's less than 300 miles, but again, it was rainy, and the roads, you really don't want to travel faster than about 50 miles an hour. I know some of the locals do and some of the trucks, but we're not as familiar with the area, and it just doesn't seem safe. Whitehorse is actually the only incorporated city in the Yukon. All the others are unincorporated towns, and it has a It has an airport. It has about a population of around 30,000, and the whole population of Yukon is only around 40,000. So most of the people in Yukon live in Whitehorse. Just before entering town, there is a nice spot to stop and get in a little bit of a hike. It's called Miles Canyon, and I do recommend you stop there. Parking is tight. If you have you really should park your RV up on the top. You can read the milepost, and they'll tell you exactly where you need to park, and so you don't get stuck down at the bottom and have to back out of up this steep hill. So that was a great spot to see this really interesting canyon and get in a couple of miles of walk to a spot where it was called Canyon City, but there was a tram built there to help carry cargo and people around the rapids on the Yukon River. "21 days to build a tramway." Wow. After all that rain this morning and the cold temperatures, it's really nice to be someplace that's 20 degrees warmer and drier. The last thing, I promised someone that I would show my camera equipment, and recorded that earlier today. And so if you're not interested, thanks for watching. If you would like to see the camera equipment that I use, then keep watching. Several people have asked about the camera equipment that we've brought on the trip. And so I thought I'd go through that for those of you who are interested. The first line of defense is always the iPhone. And if you're looking to start a channel or to document a trip, there is nothing better than an iPhone. I use my phone is the iPhone 8 and John is the 10. The camera lens on the 10 is phenomenal, and I'm just always so impressed when I see the video on this or the photos. So that if I had a new phone, it would be this one. Okay, so and on my phone I have placed one of these pop socket or something like that. And this is really helpful when you're, especially you're hanging over a bridge or a cliff and you don't want to lose your phone. You always worry about that. This is really nice to hang on to it. And it does a couple of things. It keeps fingers out of the camera, like John. And it doesn't come unglued either. This thing, I've had this on here since Albuquerque Balloon Fiesta last fall, and it's never come off of this leather case. So that's pretty impressive. Not now. Okay, the second thing is the camera that I'm shooting this with, and that's the Canon M50. And I bought that about a year ago, and I like it. I do like it very much. It's a nice, small, compact camera. I wanted a camera with the shoe mount so that I could attach things like microphones. But before I moved the microphone, make sure that's exposed. Before I moved to the microphone, I highly recommend remote control for the Canon. And don't try to do it with your iPhone. It just will frustrate you. This thing works really, really well. With the Canon, besides the kit lens that came with it, I have two other lenses that I've purchased along the way. The first one is a longer lens because I wanted to be able to get a little bit closer to animals. And this is the, see, I know nothing about cameras. Neither of us do. And this is the 55-200 millimeter. So that one. And then the other one I purchased more recently is more of a wide angle lens. This is the 22 millimeter. So those are the two lenses, but you really only need the kit lens that comes with it. Now the microphone, I have experimented with lots of microphones, and this one has worked beautifully, and I wish they'd had it out earlier, but it just came out a few months ago, and as soon as I saw it, it was at one of the trade shows that guys on YouTube were talking about it, I went, oh my gosh, that thing might actually be perfect. It is it's made by Rode, R-O-D-E, and it's their, I can't remember the name, but I'll put it up there. So I have the receiver here on me, I'm sorry, I have the microphone here on me, and then the receiver is on the cold shoe mount on the Canon, and I'll insert B-roll of that so you can see it. Okay, the next thing is my Movi FreeFly gimbal for the iPhone, and it will hold any size iPhone. And I have another gimbal. I kind of decided which one. I couldn't decide which one to bring. I ended up bringing the Movi FreeFly, and for a couple of reasons. One, it has the it's easy to mount to a tripod and set it on a table. But this is a great gimbal, and I can attach my microphone. I use this little Velcro strap here to hold on to the receiver side, and then I can just plug it into my iPhone, and that's worked well. But what has kind of taken its place, and I might not have even brought this had I purchased before we left, the Osmo Pocket. This thing is phenomenal. It's a gimbal and a camera all in one. It's so easy to grab. Last night when I was sitting here editing, out of the corner of my eye, I caught something, and I looked out and I went, oh my gosh, there's a fox right there. And I quickly, this was sitting next to me, I quickly grabbed it, turned it on. I got just kind of the tail end of the fox. I'll insert that clip. And so this is a phenomenal camera and gimbal in one, and I highly recommend the extension kit. So if you get it, I would also get the extension kit, which also gives you this little device that allows you to easily switch from front to back camera and kind of toggle between different features. So that is a great camera. It does come with a nice carrying case, and the expansion kit also comes with a mounting for that you can attach to your GoPro equipment. So that's what that is. But speaking of GoPro, was really disappointed yesterday when I turned on my GoPro Session 5 and I got nothing. It wasn't a dead battery. I put in a new SD card. It just doesn't work. And so I'm not sure what I'm going to do for the rest of this trip. I can kind of use this. I can mount this, but it's much more difficult to turn off and on. The thing I've not liked about GoPro from the beginning is the app that they use. It's just not very reliable. But we're going to go into Whitehorse in a little while, and I'm going to see if by some weird chance they might have a camera store or something where I can either replace this or get the new DJI action camera that's just come out. I also have I have two tripods. I have three tripods. One is a teeny tiny tripod. I think it's up there, John. If you want to hand it to me, it's right above right above there. This is the Joby, one of their Joby Gorilla things, but they make them in different sizes. So this one I think is called the 1K. You just tossed it to me. This is a tripod that I've had since, gosh, I've probably had this 40 years. It was made by a company called Early Winters, or they put their name on it. But I've seen these other places, and it's just an ultralight tripod. So this is good for smaller cameras and for people who are going ultralight. So I brought that just in case I wanted to mount my light. And speaking of lights, here's the light that I discovered recently. It's called LumaCube Air. L-U-M-E, maybe it's LumeCube. Anyway, this is a great light. It has 4 settings, very bright, comes with 2 diffusers, and it's small, and I like it for filling in when the lighting is really bad like it is today. And then I have the tripod that the camera is mounted on right now, and that's made by Me Photo. Do I have that right? Me Photo. It's not the best camera tripod, but it works, and it was the most compact tripod that I could find that was affordable. I think I got it on sale. It was like 60 bucks at B&H Photo. And I think it's because it's orange and nobody wanted orange. Let's see, what else have I, oh, I've left off the drone. So you saw my drone flight a couple weeks ago. That's the Instant Pot telling me the scones are ready, but we'll let it sit there for a minute. So the drone is the DJI Spark. I did buy a case to carry it in because I knew that we were going to get jostled a lot on this trip. But yes, I bought the Spark with the controller. And I'm hoping that we will get to a spot where the weather and the conditions will be right, that I can take it up on a flight and actually properly get the camera turned around and all that sort of thing. I forgot to bring the instructions, so we need to download the instructions for this thing. So that's the drone. There, let's see, I feel like I've left something out. I do have quite a bit of bits and bobs, some filters and things like that. Mostly I just use the ND filter on my camera lenses, and but the others kind of came along with it. There's a lot of GoPro stuff in here that I wouldn't have needed if I'd known it was going to break. And let's see, the last thing that I do my microphone, John? Yes, that's the last thing is my computer, which if you're going to do any editing, obviously you need a laptop. And this is the Apple GoPro with a terabyte of memory, but I do not, I'm sorry, this is the MacBook Pro with a terabyte of memory, but what I really need is more RAM because it's a struggle to edit video on any laptop. And what I use, I don't use the memory in the computer because I would go through that too fast. So I have several hard drives that I bring, and then the SSD card that I use for all my current editing and everything else. So after a video is done, then it gets transferred to another drive and frees up space on here. So that is, and I use Final Cut Pro for editing if you're interested, and it really is frustrating because it's a computer thing. I don't think it's Final Cut Pro. It's a good program. It's very difficult to learn all the ins and outs of these editing programs, but I watch a lot of YouTube videos of people trying to teach me how to do it better. So that's it, and now we're going to go dig into those scones.